The night Lucy was abandoned, the blizzard erased everything. Roads, voices, hope. An 8-year-old girl stood alone in the cold, watching the only car she trusted disappear into the snow. Fear crept in. Silence pressed down. Then, through the storm, came a sound that didn't belong to despair. A deep, steady bark. Out of the white darkness stepped Ethan Walker, a quiet U.S. Army veteran. His
Good
old
boy, Rex.
multicam
You found her?
jacket faded by time and war. At his side sat Rex, a German shepherd standing alert like a soldier who never left his post. That night wasn't just a rescue. It was the moment a broken child, a wounded soldier, and a loyal dog crossed paths. And nothing after that would ever be the same. The snow didn't fall that night. It attacked. On the upper stretch of Timberline Road, the world narrowed into white chaos. Wind screaming through the trees, ice biting at exposed skin, visibility collapsing into a tunnel of swirling frost. It was the kind of storm locals warned about, but rarely respected. The kind that erased footprints within minutes. The kind that swallowed mistakes whole. Ethan Walker stood just off the shoulder of the road, boots planted firmly in knee-deep snow, his old multicam jacket stiff with ice. The fabric had faded over the years, the colors dulled by sun, rain, and places he didn't talk about. On his head sat a black cap embroidered with simple white letters, U.S. Army Veteran. It wasn't for attention, it was habit. 2 metal dog tags hung against his chest, tucked just inside his jacket, resting where his heart still beat steady despite everything it had seen. On his wrist, a large black military-style watch ticked quietly, its face scratched, its function flawless. Ethan trusted tools that kept working long after they should have quit. Beside him sat Rex. The German shepherd didn't move. Brown and black fur dusted with snow, muscular frame coiled but calm, ears erect and scanning the storm. His tactical collar, thick, reinforced, marked clearly with RX, rested snug against his neck. Not a pet collar, a working one. Rex's amber eyes never left Ethan's silhouette, as if awaiting a signal that might never come. They had been heading nowhere in particular. That was the point. After leaving the service, Ethan learned that wandering without purpose was safer than chasing one. Purpose had a way of reopening doors best left closed. Nights like this, silent except for the wind, were easier. The cold made things simple. You survived, or you didn't. Then Rex's ears shifted, just slightly. Ethan noticed immediately. He always did. Rex didn't bark, didn't whine. He only turned his head toward the tree line on the downhill side of the road, posture tightening in a way Ethan recognized from long ago. Not alarm, not aggression, attention. Ethan followed the line of Rex's gaze, squinting into the white blur. At first, there was nothing, just snow-choked branches and shadow. Then he saw it, a shape, small, still, too still. Ethan didn't rush. He never rushed. Panic clouded judgment, and judgment kept people alive. He raised one gloved hand. Not a command, just a quiet signal. Rex rose silently, padding forward at Ethan's left side, close enough that their shoulders nearly aligned. They moved downhill together. The wind grew louder near the trees, funneling through the branches like a warning. Ethan's boots broke through crusted snow as he stepped off the road, every movement deliberate. Then he saw her. A girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. She stood near the base of a pine, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Thin jacket soaked through, boots mismatched and already crusted with ice. A knitted hat sat crooked on her head, damp strands of light brown hair clinging to her cheeks. Snow collected on her shoulders and melted, then froze again. Her eyes, wide gray-blue, lifted slowly when she heard them approach. She didn't scream. That was what stopped Ethan cold. Children screamed when they were scared, unless they had learned that screaming didn't help. Ethan knelt immediately, lowering himself to her level, careful not to crowd her space. Rex stopped a step behind him, body angled slightly outward, instinctively placing himself between the girl and the forest. "Hey," Ethan said, voice low, steady, carried just enough to cut through the wind. "You're okay. You're not alone." The girl's lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably. Her hands were red, fingers stiff with cold. She stared at Rex for a long second, then back at Ethan, as if weighing something important. "My name is Lucy," she whispered finally. The words barely survived the storm. Ethan shrugged off his jacket in one smooth motion and wrapped it around her shoulders. The fabric was heavy, warm, and smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Lucy flinched at the sudden contact, then froze, unsure whether to pull away. "It's all right," Ethan said. "Just the jacket." Rex stepped closer then, slowly, deliberately, and sat beside her. He didn't touch her at first, just existed, solid, breathing, present. After a moment, Lucy leaned slightly into his side without realizing it, drawn by the heat. Ethan noticed the way her body reacted, not to the cold, but to proximity, the tension, the hesitation, the way her eyes flicked between him and the road behind them. "Did someone bring you out here?" Ethan asked gently. Lucy nodded once. "Where are they now?" She swallowed. Her gaze dropped to the snow. "They left," she said. Ethan didn't ask who. He didn't need to. There were things you could read without being told. The absence of footprints leading away from her. The way she hadn't tried to follow the road. The way she'd chosen to stand still and wait. Waiting was learned behavior. Ethan pulled an emergency tarp from his pack and secured it between two trees, blocking the worst of the wind. He moved with practiced efficiency, hands sure despite the cold. Lucy watched him closely, eyes tracking every motion, as if memorizing proof that someone was still there. Rex settled fully beside her now, pressing his flank against her legs. Lucy's breathing began to slow, just a little. "You did the right thing staying put," Ethan said. Lucy shook her head faintly. "They said no one would come." Ethan met her eyes then. Really met them. "They were wrong," he said. Somewhere beyond the trees, the wind howled louder, swallowing the road, erasing tracks, hiding truths. But here, beneath the tarp, beside the quiet strength of a soldier and his dog, Lucy sat wrapped in borrowed warmth. For the first time that night, she wasn't invisible. And Ethan Walker, standing guard against the storm, didn't yet know that this moment, this small, quiet decision not to walk away, was already changing the course of all their lives. The storm didn't ease, it only shifted direction. Under the emergency tarp, the wind howled less violently, but the cold remained. A deeper, quieter cold that seeped into bone and thought alike. Snow whispered against the fabric above them, piling weight slowly, patiently, the way pressure always did. Ethan crouched near the small fire he had coaxed into life, feeding it just enough to hold warmth without drawing attention. He moved with economy. No wasted gestures, no nervous pacing. Discipline had a way of surviving long after uniforms were folded away. Lucy sat cross-legged on the ground, wrapped in Ethan's jacket, Rex pressed firmly against her side. The German shepherd's breathing was steady, controlled. his body a wall of quiet reassurance. Lucy's fingers curled into the thick fur at his neck without realizing it, knuckles slowly losing their white edge. Ethan watched her hands. Hands told stories mouths wouldn't. They trembled, not just from cold. They tightened when the wind snapped too loudly. They loosened only when Rex shifted closer, anchoring her to something solid. "You warm enough?" Ethan asked. Lucy nodded, then hesitated, then nodded again. He didn't push. Silence was not emptiness, it was space, and space gave people room to choose their words instead of having them pulled out. Ethan poured a small amount of warm water into a metal cup and handed it to her carefully. Lucy took it with both hands, fingers brushing his gloves. She flinched, just a little, at the contact, then quickly covered it by lifting the cup to her lips. Ethan noticed. He always noticed. "What were you doing out here tonight?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral, almost casual. Lucy stared into the cup as if the answer might be floating inside it. "They said we were going for a drive," she said softly. "Who's they?" Lucy's shoulders drew inward. Her voice dropped. "My mom and her husband." Ethan nodded once. No reaction, no judgment, just acknowledgement. "Do you live nearby?" She shook her head. "In town, near the old mill." The mill. Ethan knew it. Half abandoned, poorly lit. The kind of place people forgot until something went wrong. "What happened on the drive?" he asked. Lucy swallowed. Her eyes flicked toward the road again, then back to Rex. "He got quiet," she said. Ethan felt something settle heavy in his chest. Quiet could mean a lot of things. In combat, it meant incoming. In homes, it meant storms of a different kind. "That's when it's worse," Lucy added, almost as an afterthought. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He reached out and adjusted the tarp, securing a corner that had begun to flap. The act gave Lucy time, gave her control. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. "Worse how?" Lucy's grip on Rex tightened. "He doesn't yell," she said. "Not then." Rex's ears flicked back briefly, a low vibration humming through his chest. Not a growl, but awareness. Lucy continued, words careful, measured. "He just looks at you, like you already messed up." Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. "That look," she said, "means you should stay still." Ethan felt the echo of something old press against his ribs. Different setting, same lesson. "Does your mom stop him?" he asked. Lucy hesitated. "She says not to make him angry," Lucy replied. "She says it's easier if I listen." The fire crackled. Lucy stared at the flames now, voice quieter. "She says he works hard, that I shouldn't complain." Ethan didn't need to hear more. He'd heard this story before, just with different uniforms, different walls, different excuses. Rex shifted then, placing his head gently on Lucy's knee. Lucy startled, then relaxed, fingers threading through his fur. Her breathing slowed further, steadied by the simple rhythm of another living being who asked nothing from her. Ethan watched Rex carefully. The dog's eyes were fixed on Lucy now, not the forest, not the road. His posture had changed, not defensive, but attentive, like a teammate listening to a debrief that mattered. "Did they tell you why they brought you out here?" Ethan asked. Lucy shook her head. "He said I needed to learn," she whispered. "Learn what?" Lucy shrugged, a small, helpless motion. "What happens?" she said. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his face remained calm. "Did they leave you here on purpose?" Lucy didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. The wind howled again, louder now, pushing against the tarp as if demanding entry. Ethan adjusted his stance instinctively, placing himself more squarely between Lucy and the open forest. "Lucy," he said gently, "I need you to hear me." She looked up. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her eyes searched his face, uncertain. "They always say that," she murmured. Ethan held her gaze. "I'm not they." Something shifted then. Not dramatic, not loud, just a subtle loosening in Lucy's shoulders. A fraction of weight lifted from someplace deep. Rex let out a slow breath, tail thumping once against the snow. Ethan reached into his pack and pulled out his radio, checking the signal. Static crackled faintly, then steadied. Before he could speak into it, Rex's body tensed, not alarmed, alert. His ears snapped forward, eyes locking onto the darkness beyond the tarp. Ethan followed Rex's gaze instantly, one hand rising. Not a command, just readiness. "What is it?" Lucy whispered. Ethan listened. At first, there was only wind. Then, faintly, a sound beneath it. An engine, far off, straining, searching. Lucy's body went rigid. "That's them," she said. Ethan didn't move. He didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't raise his voice. He did something far more important. He stayed. "Rex," Ethan murmured. The German shepherd rose silently to his feet, positioning himself at the edge of the tarp. Broad shoulders squared, stance grounded. Not aggressive, not retreating, holding the line. Ethan keyed his radio calmly, voice low, precise, professional. "Dispatch," he said. "I've got a miner located on Timberline Road. Possible abandonment. Requesting assistance." Lucy stared at him, fear flickering across her face. "They'll be mad," she whispered. Ethan met her eyes. "That's not your problem anymore," he said. Outside, the engine noise grew slightly louder, then faded again, swallowed by snow and darkness. Rex did not move. Neither did Ethan. For the first time in a long while, Lucy wasn't the one waiting to see who would leave. Someone else was holding position now. And the night, no matter how loud it screamed, would have to reckon with that. The engine sound came back. This time, it didn't fade. It lingered somewhere beyond the trees, low and uneven, like an animal circling without committing. The wind carried it in fragments, metal straining, tires slipping, then silence again. Lucy's fingers tightened in Rex's fur. Her breathing changed instantly, not faster, shallower. Ethan noticed the shift before she spoke. He always noticed changes in breathing. They meant more than words ever did. "They came back," Lucy whispered. Ethan didn't contradict her. He didn't reassure her with empty certainty. He didn't tell her everything would be fine. He simply said, "Stay right here." Not a command, a promise. Ethan stepped just outside the tarp, positioning himself where he could see the road without exposing Lucy. Rex moved with him automatically, matching his pace, stopping when Ethan stopped. The dog's posture had shifted again. Ears forward, weight balanced evenly, tail still, not fear, readiness. Ethan scanned the darkness, letting his eyes adjust. Snow blurred outlines, but motion left signatures. Tire tracks reappearing where none had been before, a faint glow cutting through the white, then dimming. Someone was out there. Ethan keyed his radio again, keeping his voice calm, measured. "Dispatch," he said. "Vehicle possibly returning to location, maintaining position." Static crackled, then a voice responded, distant but present. "Copy that. Units en route. Maintain safety." Ethan acknowledged and clipped the radio back to his jacket. Lucy's voice came softly from behind him. "Are they mad?" Ethan turned slightly, just enough for her to see his face. "Whatever they're feeling," he said, "doesn't change what's happening next." Lucy studied him, trying to understand. Rex glanced back at her briefly, amber eyes steady, then returned his focus to the tree line. The engine noise grew louder. Headlights flickered through the snow, brief, uncertain, like the driver wasn't sure they wanted to be seen. The vehicle stopped somewhere down the road, just out of sight. A door opened. Lucy flinched. "That sound," she whispered. "That's his door." Ethan felt the weight of confirmation settle into his chest. He stepped forward deliberately, boots crunching in the snow, making himself visible. He raised his flashlight, not aggressively, just enough to mark presence. The beam cut through the storm and landed on the edge of the road. A man's voice called out, "Lucy." It was loud, too loud, forced. Ethan didn't answer. Rex let out a single, controlled bark, not a warning, not an attack, a declaration. The voice hesitated. "Lucy," it called again. "Stop playing around. You're scaring your mother." Lucy shrank back beneath the tarp, pressing her face briefly into Rex's shoulder. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped fully into view now. Light steady, posture squared. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. "This is not your child anymore," he said calmly. "Step away from the area." Silence. Then another voice joined the first, lower, edged with irritation. "Who the hell are you?" Ethan didn't answer that question either. "You need to leave," he said. "Law enforcement has been notified." A figure moved closer, boots crunching unevenly. The flashlight beam caught a man's outline. Broad shoulders, hood pulled tight, face shadowed by snow and anger. "You don't know what you're talking about," the man snapped. "She wandered off." Lucy shook her head violently beneath the tarp. "No," she whispered. "I didn't." Ethan spoke again, voice unwavering. "She was left in a whiteout," he said. "That's not wandering." The man laughed, a short, brittle sound. "You some kind of hero?" he sneered. "You think you can tell me how to raise—" Rex moved, not forward, sideways. He stepped into full view, placing himself directly between Ethan and the man. Broad chest squared, stance firm, eyes locked. His teeth didn't show. His body didn't shake. He didn't need to. The man stopped. Ethan noticed the subtle shift, the way bravado faltered when met with something that didn't bluff. Another figure appeared behind the first, taller, wrapped in a long coat, face partially hidden. A woman's voice, strained and tight. "Lucy," she called. "Lucy, please." Lucy froze. "That's my mom," she whispered. Ethan felt the tremor in her voice. Not relief, not hope. Fear. The woman stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture that might have been meant to look harmless. "Sweetheart," she said, forcing warmth into her tone. "Come on. You're cold. Let's go home." Lucy didn't move. "She said that before," Lucy murmured. Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't speak for Lucy. He waited. Lucy took a breath that seemed to scrape on the way in. "You said I make things harder," she said quietly. "You said it would be easier if I wasn't there." The woman stiffened. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "You know how he gets when he's stressed." Ethan felt something old and familiar twist inside him. The justification, the deflection, the silence wrapped in excuses. Rex shifted his weight slightly, placing more of his body between Lucy and the voices. The man scoffed. "You're letting some stranger and his dog tell you what to do?" He snapped at the woman. "Get her, now!" Ethan raised one hand. "Stop," he said. The word carried weight, not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. This interaction is being recorded, Ethan continued, tapping the body camera mounted on his chest. The red light blinked steadily in the snow. Everything you say, everything you do. The man cursed under his breath. The woman's eyes flicked to the camera, then to Lucy. Lucy, she said again, voice cracking now, not with love, but with fear of consequence. Please. Lucy didn't answer. She reached out instead and wrapped her small hand around Rex's collar. I want to stay here, she said. The words were quiet. They were enough. The man stepped back suddenly. Forget this, he muttered. This is stupid. He grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her toward the vehicle. This isn't over, he snapped toward Ethan. You hear me? Ethan didn't respond. The engine roared again, louder this time, angry and unsteady. Tires spun, then caught. Headlights swung wildly before disappearing into the storm. Silence returned. Not the heavy silence of fear, the quiet of something finished. Lucy exhaled shakily. They left, she said. Yes, Ethan replied. They did. Rex relaxed then, lowering himself back beside Lucy, placing his head near her knee. Lucy leaned into him fully now, the last of her tension giving way. Ethan crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance. You did exactly what you needed to do, he said. Lucy looked up at him, eyes wet but steady. I didn't move, she said. Ethan nodded. That's called holding your ground. In the distance, faint but real, sirens began to cut through the storm. Help was coming. But more importantly, Lucy was no longer alone while waiting for it. The sirens arrived like a distant memory returning slowly. At first, Lucy thought she imagined them. Sound had played tricks on her all night. Wind that screamed like voices, branches that cracked like doors. But this sound was different. Steady, intentional, growing louder instead of fading. Ethan heard it too. He straightened, adjusting the strap of his pack, eyes scanning the road once more. Rex lifted his head, ears pivoting toward the sound, body alert but no longer tense. The danger had passed. What remained was responsibility. Help is coming, Ethan said. Lucy nodded, but she didn't smile. She had learned that help sometimes came with strings attached. The headlights appeared first, cutting through the snow in disciplined arcs. Then the vehicles themselves, 2 patrol units easing to a stop a safe distance away. Doors opened. Boots hit snow. Radios murmured. Ethan raised one hand, slow and visible. I'm here, he called out. Child located. She's safe. A sheriff's deputy approached, cautious but calm. He was middle-aged, bundled against the cold, eyes sharp beneath a knit cap. You the one who called it in? The deputy asked. Ethan nodded. Name's Ethan Walker, Army veteran. I found her during the storm. The deputy glanced at Rex, then at Lucy beneath the tarp. She okay? She was cold, Ethan replied. Scared, but stable. The deputy nodded once and motioned to another officer, who moved to secure the area without urgency. No one rushed Lucy. No one barked orders. Ethan noticed that and approved. A woman approached next, wrapped in a heavy coat. Her expression composed but attentive. She knelt slowly to Lucy's level, careful not to crowd her. Hi, the woman said softly. My name's Claire. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Lucy looked at Ethan. He met her gaze and nodded once. It's your choice, he said quietly. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to. Lucy looked back at Claire. I don't want to go with them, she said. Claire didn't flinch. She didn't ask who they were. Okay, she said. We won't. Something in Lucy's shoulders loosened at that, just a little. Rex shifted closer to Lucy, his tactical collar catching the patrol lights briefly. The deputy glanced at it. "That dog yours?" he asked Ethan. "Yes," Ethan replied. "His name's Rex." "Well," the deputy said, "he's doing a hell of a job." Ethan didn't smile. Praise made him uncomfortable. Rex, however, flicked an ear as if acknowledging the comment. The officers worked efficiently, documenting tracks, photographing the area, collecting details without turning the moment into a spectacle. Ethan answered questions when asked. He stuck to facts, times, locations, what he heard, what he saw, no embellishment. Lucy was wrapped in a thermal blanket and gently guided toward one of the vehicles. Before stepping away, she stopped and looked back at Ethan. "You're not leaving?" she asked. Ethan paused. "I'll stay until you don't need me to," he said. She nodded and climbed inside. Rex whined softly once, then settled when Ethan rested a hand on his shoulder. The storm began to thin as dawn crept closer, the sky shifting from black to deep blue. Snow still fell, but less angrily now, as if exhausted by its own fury. Inside the patrol vehicle, Lucy watched the world pass through fogged glass. She clutched the edge of the blanket with one hand. With the other, she reached out, hesitant, unsure. Rex placed his head gently on her knee. She froze for a heartbeat, then let her hand rest on his fur. Ethan walked beside the vehicle as it rolled slowly toward town. He didn't ride inside. He needed the cold, needed the quiet. He had seen storms like this before. Different terrain, different reasons, same aftermath. When they reached the station, the building glowed warm against the snow. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and old paper. Lucy was guided gently to a chair, given warm water, dry socks. No one rushed her. No one spoke over her. Ethan stood off to the side, Rex sitting at his heel like he'd done 1,000 times before. The tactical collar, the quiet vigilance, it all looked out of place here. And yet, it fit. Claire returned with a clipboard. "Lucy," she said softly, "I'm going to ask you a few questions later. Not tonight if you don't want to. For now, I just want you to rest." Lucy nodded. "Can Rex stay?" she asked. Claire smiled gently. "If Ethan says yes." Ethan looked down at Rex. The dog's eyes were on Lucy now, unwavering. "Yes," Ethan said. "He stays." Time passed strangely after that. The adrenaline faded. Fatigue settled in its place. Ethan found himself sitting on a bench outside the station, Rex lying beside him, chin on his paws. Snow melted slowly from the brim of Ethan's faded multicam jacket. His veteran cap sat low, shadowing his eyes. He stared out at the quiet street, mind drifting to places he didn't visit often anymore, moments when staying had mattered more than fighting. Lucy emerged later, wrapped in a borrowed sweatshirt, hair brushed, face calmer but still guarded. She stopped when she saw Ethan. "You didn't leave," she said. Ethan shook his head. "I said I wouldn't." She hesitated, then sat beside him on the bench, leaving a careful space between them. Rex shifted, bridging that space effortlessly. "Will they come back?" she asked. Ethan considered the question. "Not tonight," he said, "and not like before." Lucy absorbed that. "Where will I go?" she asked. Ethan looked ahead, not at her. "There are people whose job is to make sure you're safe," he said. "Some of them are very good at it." She nodded slowly. "Do they let dogs come?" she asked. Ethan glanced down at Rex, who thumped his tail once. "Sometimes," he said. Lucy smiled faintly at that. The sky lightened further, morning pushing winter back inch by inch. The storm was over, but its imprint remained. In snowbanks, in silence, in the careful way Lucy leaned just a little closer to Rex. Ethan stood when a deputy called his name. There were forms to sign, statements to give, a future to set in motion. Before he went inside, Lucy spoke again. "Thank you," she said. Ethan turned. "For what?" he asked. "For staying," she replied. Ethan nodded once. Rex stood with him, steady and unyielding. Some battles didn't end with noise. Some victories looked like a quiet bench at dawn, a child no longer waiting alone, and a line held, not by force, but by presence. The hardest part came after everything went quiet. Not the storm, not the shouting, not even the waiting. It was the stillness that followed, the kind that left too much room for thoughts to speak. Lucy sat in the small interview room long after the questions had stopped. The lights were dimmed, the walls a neutral gray meant to feel safe. A paper cup of cocoa rested untouched on the table in front of her. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, feet dangling just above the floor, posture careful, as if she were bracing for something she couldn't name. Ethan stood outside the door. He hadn't been asked to stay. He hadn't been told to leave. So he waited. Rex lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. The tactical collar sat heavy against his neck, the name Rex stitched in firm block letters, worn but clear. A working dog, even now. Claire stepped out of the room quietly and closed the door behind her. "She's exhausted," she said softly, "and she's holding back." Ethan nodded. "Most kids do." Claire studied him for a moment. "You've seen this before." Ethan didn't answer. "You don't have to be involved beyond tonight," Claire continued. "We'll place her temporarily. There are procedures." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "She asked if Rex could stay," he said. Claire sighed. "That's what worries me." Ethan turned to face her fully now. "She's not clinging to the dog," he said. "She's anchoring herself." Claire hesitated. "She won't sleep unless she knows where he is," she admitted. She kept checking the hallway. Ethan glanced toward the door. "She's learned that quiet means something's wrong," he said. Claire looked down at her clipboard, then back up. "She said something else." Ethan waited. "Ma, she said the storm wasn't the first time she'd been left somewhere cold." The words landed heavier than the night ever had. Ethan felt something inside him shift, not explode, not fracture, just realign. "I didn't ask for details," Claire added quickly. "Not tonight." Ethan nodded once. "Good." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the building filling the space between them. Claire broke it gently. "We'll need a temporary placement by morning." Ethan looked back at the door again. "Does she know that?" he asked. Claire shook her head. "Not yet." Ethan exhaled slowly. Rex lifted his head, sensing the shift. His ears angled toward the door as if he could feel the weight on the other side of it. "I'll sit with her," Ethan said. Claire hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Inside, Lucy looked up the moment the door opened. Her eyes went first to Rex, then to Ethan. "You came back," she said. Ethan closed the door behind him and leaned against the wall, not crowding her. "I said I would," he replied. Lucy studied his face carefully, like she was memorizing it. "But they asked me questions," she said. "I know." "I didn't tell them everything." Ethan didn't react. "That's okay," he said. Lucy frowned. "They said I should." "They're right," Ethan said gently. "Eventually." She looked down at her hands. "But not all at once," he added. Her shoulders dropped just a fraction. Rex padded over and lay beside her chair, placing his head near her feet. Lucy didn't touch him this time. She just let him be there. "They said I might stay somewhere else," she said. "Yes. Not home." "No." Lucy swallowed. "What if I mess that up too?" Ethan crouched slightly so they were closer to eye level, but not equal. He never forgot she was a child. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "You didn't mess anything up." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "They always say I'm difficult," she whispered. Ethan shook his head once. Firm. "No," he said. "You're observant." She looked confused. "You notice patterns," he continued. "You read rooms. You adjust to survive." Lucy stared at him, something unfamiliar flickering across her face. "That's not being difficult," Ethan said. "That's being strong too early." Rex let out a low, steady breath. Lucy's lip trembled. "I don't want to be strong anymore," she said. The words were barely audible. Ethan felt the truth of them hit deeper than any accusation ever could. "You don't have to be," he replied. Lucy looked at him then. Really looked. "Who will watch if I stop?" Ethan didn't answer right away, because this time the question wasn't about her. It was about him. About what it meant to stand guard without a uniform. About whether staying once meant staying again. About the line between help and responsibility. Rex shifted closer, placing his body against Ethan's knee now, grounding both of them. Ethan took a breath. "I will," he said. Lucy blinked. "You?" "For tonight," Ethan clarified. "And tomorrow." "And after?" Ethan hesitated. That was the moment, the one he would remember later. Not the storm, not the confrontation. This. "I don't make promises lightly," he said. "But I don't walk away either." Lucy nodded slowly. "That's okay," she said. I just needed to know someone could." Ethan stood when Claire knocked softly. "Time," she said. Lucy stood too, then paused. "Can Rex sleep where I am?" she asked. Claire glanced at Ethan. Ethan looked down at Rex. The dog's eyes were steady, loyal, waiting. "Yes," Ethan said. Lucy reached out then, not gripping, not clinging, just resting her hand briefly on Rex's collar. "Thank you," she whispered, to both of them. As she was led down the hallway, Ethan remained behind, Rex at his side. Claire stopped before following. "You realize," she said quietly, "this is how it starts." Ethan nodded. "I know," he said. Outside, dawn broke fully over the town, pale light revealing streets still buried in snow. Ethan stepped out into the cold air, veteran cap pulled low, breath visible. Rex sat beside him, silent, vigilant. Ethan stared at the horizon. He had survived war by knowing when to hold position. This time, the battle wasn't loud, and the weight he was choosing to carry was lighter than guilt, but heavier than memory. Morning didn't bring relief. It brought decisions. The courthouse smelled like old wood and burnt coffee. The kind of place where time slowed down just enough to make every choice feel permanent. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, pale and cold, illuminating dust that floated like unspoken words. Ethan sat on a wooden bench near the back, hands clasped loosely, posture straight out of habit. His faded multicam jacket stood out against the neutral tones of the room. The veteran cap rested on his knee now, brim worn soft from years of use. Rex lay at his feet, even here, even now. The German shepherd's presence drew glances, curious, cautious, respectful. His tactical collar looked out of place in a courtroom, yet somehow entirely appropriate. Like Ethan, Rex didn't belong here, but wasn't leaving either. Lucy sat at a small table near the front with a court-appointed advocate. Her feet didn't quite touch the floor. She wore borrowed clothes again, sleeves too long, colors chosen by someone trying to be kind without knowing her yet. She didn't look back. But Rex knew she was there. Ethan felt the shift in the dog's breathing before anything else happened. A subtle alertness, awareness sharpening. The judge entered quietly. No drama, no ceremony, just gravity. The proceedings moved faster than Ethan expected. Words like temporary placement, protective custody, best interest echoed through the room, clinical and precise. Necessary, still heavy. When Lucy was asked to stand, she did so carefully, eyes fixed on a spot just past the judge's shoulder. She answered questions softly, clearly, without contradiction. She had learned how to survive rooms like this. That knowledge hurt more than any accusation could. Then it was Ethan's turn. He hadn't expected it. "Mr. Walker," the judge said, peering down at him over her glasses. "You were the individual who located the child?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you stayed with her through the night?" "Yes." "Voluntarily?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes." The judge glanced at her notes. "You are not law enforcement." "No." "You are not family." "No." A pause. "Then why did you stay?" Ethan lifted his eyes. "Because leaving wasn't an option," he said. The courtroom stilled, not because his answer was dramatic, but because it was final. The judge studied him for a long moment. "Are you aware," she asked, "that remaining involved could complicate placement?" "Yes." "Are you prepared," she continued, "for the responsibility that may follow?" Ethan felt Rex shift closer to his leg. He thought of Lucy's question the night before. "Who will watch if I stop?" "I don't seek responsibility," Ethan said, "but I don't abandon it either." The judge leaned back slightly. "Sit," she said. As Ethan returned to the bench, a murmur rippled through the room. Not approval, recognition. Lucy finally glanced back. Her eyes met his for just a second. Rex lifted his head. That was all. During the recess, Claire found Ethan in the hallway. "You understand," she said quietly, "that if you stay involved, they'll evaluate you." "I expect that," Ethan replied. "They'll ask about your past." "I have one." "They'll ask why a man who avoids attachment is suddenly standing in a courtroom." Ethan met her gaze. "Because avoiding attachment doesn't mean you don't recognize duty." Claire exhaled slowly. "There are foster families lined up," she said. "Good ones." Ethan nodded. "I hope she finds one." "And if she doesn't?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Rex's tail tapped the floor once. "If she doesn't," Ethan said, "then I won't pretend I didn't hear the call." Claire studied him carefully. "You're not offering to take her," she said. "No," Ethan replied. "I'm offering not to disappear." That answer unsettled her more than certainty would have. Back inside, the judge issued her ruling. Lucy would remain in protective custody, placement to be determined, visitation supervised, immediate removal from her previous environment confirmed. No appeals, no delays. When the gavel came down, Lucy didn't flinch. She just sat very still. Ethan watched her shoulders rise and fall once, measured, controlled, too controlled. Outside, reporters gathered, but not for Ethan, not for Lucy. Small towns knew how to keep some stories quiet. Ethan stood on the courthouse steps, Rex beside him, sun low in the sky. Lucy emerged with Claire, carrying a small bag of belongings that weighed far less than it should have. She stopped when she saw Ethan. "They said I'll stay somewhere else," she said. "Yes." "For a while?" "Yes." Lucy hesitated. Will you still be around? Ethan knelt slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. I won't insert myself into your life, he said carefully, but I won't vanish either. Lucy nodded. That's enough, she said. Rex stepped forward then, pressing his head gently against Lucy's leg. She rested her hand on his collar, just for a moment. I like that he doesn't leave, she said. Ethan felt the weight of that sentence settle somewhere permanent. As Claire guided Lucy toward the waiting car, Ethan remained where he was. Rex sat at his side, silent, steady. The line had been crossed, not by force, not by impulse, but by choice. And once crossed, some lines never let you go back the same way. The house sat at the edge of town, white paint weathered by years of sun and snow, a low fence half buried where winter hadn't let go yet. It looked ordinary in the way safe places often did, unremarkable, unannounced. Lucy stood in the driveway, small duffel bag at her feet, fingers knotted into the strap. She watched the front door as if it might speak first. It's just for now, Claire said gently beside her. You don't have to decide anything today. Lucy nodded. She had learned how to nod. Inside, voices moved, calm, measured, unfamiliar. The foster couple waited by the door, not smiling too much, not stepping too close. They had been briefed. They knew better than to rush a child who had learned what rushing could cost. Lucy crossed the threshold slowly. Behind her, down the street, a familiar engine idled. Ethan didn't pull into the driveway. He stopped at the curb, far enough to avoid intrusion, close enough to be present. He leaned against his truck, arms folded, faded multicam jacket catching the light. The veteran cap shaded his eyes. His black military watch marked time he no longer counted the same way. Rex sat beside him, posture upright, ears tracking the house. The tactical collar, Rex stitched clear and worn, rested against his thick fur. He didn't strain. He didn't whine. He waited. Lucy paused just inside the doorway. She turned, not fully, just enough to look back through the open door. She saw them. Ethan didn't raise a hand. He didn't nod. He didn't signal. He simply stayed where he was. Lucy's breath left her slowly, a tension she hadn't known she was holding finally loosening its grip. She stepped fully inside, the door closing gently behind her. The house smelled like clean wood and something warm baking. The sounds were small and ordinary, cups set down, a chair moving, a clock ticking softly somewhere deeper in the rooms. Lucy chose a spot on the couch nearest the window. She always chose exits. A glass of water appeared on the table in front of her. She didn't drink it right away. She placed her hand beside it, fingers flat, grounding herself in the cool surface. The foster woman, Anne, sat in the chair across from her, hands folded in her lap. Her husband, Mark, stayed near the kitchen doorway, present but not looming. We're glad you're here, Anne said. You can take things at your own pace. Lucy nodded. Outside, Rex shifted his weight. Ethan noticed. Time passed in pieces. Questions asked, not too many. Answers given, not all. Lucy was shown her room, small, clean, a bed made with a quilt that didn't smell like anyone else yet. She touched the edge of it, then withdrew her hand. Dinner's whenever you're ready, Anne said. Lucy nodded again. When she returned to the living room, she drifted toward the window without meaning to. Ethan was still there. So was Rex. She pressed her forehead lightly against the glass, just for a second. Then she turned away. Ethan waited another 10 minutes after the door closed. Long enough to know she wasn't coming back out. Long enough to know staying longer would turn presence into pressure. All right, he murmured. Rex stood immediately. They drove away without ceremony. That night, Lucy didn't sleep much. Not because the house was unsafe, because safety felt unfamiliar. Every creak of the old boards made her eyes open. Every distant sound pulled her halfway upright. She counted breaths. She counted seconds between ticks of the clock. At some point, she heard a car pass slowly down the street. She held still. Then, nothing. Morning came gently. Anne didn't wake her. Mark left early for work without noise. Breakfast waited warm but unannounced. Lucy ate half a piece of toast before stopping. At school, she sat in the back, watched hands, watched feet, learned names without using them yet. When a teacher asked if she was okay, Lucy said yes. She was good at that. After school, she walked home with measured steps. She paused at the gate before opening it. A truck was parked at the curb, not Ethan's. Her chest tightened. Then she saw him, standing on the sidewalk across the street, hands in his jacket pockets, Rex seated at his side. He hadn't come closer. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't asked. Lucy opened the gate and stepped out onto the sidewalk. Ethan didn't move until she did. "You don't have to stop," he said. Lucy stopped anyway. "I wanted to see Rex," she said. Rex's tail thumped once. Ethan crouched slightly and rested a hand on the dog's collar. "You can say hi." Lucy approached carefully, knelt, and placed both hands on Rex's shoulders. The dog leaned into her touch, steady and warm. She buried her face briefly in his fur, breathing him in like proof. Ethan watched without speaking. "He doesn't ask questions," Lucy said quietly. "No," Ethan agreed. "He listens." Lucy straightened. "They're nice," she said, referring to the house. "They don't tell me to hurry." "That's good." "They leave lights on," she added, as if surprised by it. Ethan nodded. "They said I can keep the door open," Lucy continued. "Or closed. My choice." "That matters," Ethan said. Lucy hesitated. "Will you keep coming?" she asked. Ethan considered the question the way he considered everything. "I won't show up unless you want me to," he said. "But if you look for me—" "You'll be there," she finished. "Yes." Lucy nodded. "That's enough," she said again. Anne appeared at the doorway then, stopping when she saw them. She didn't interrupt. She didn't rush Lucy. When Lucy stood, Rex rose with her. "Thank you," Lucy said to Ethan. "For what?" "For not standing too close," she replied. Ethan almost smiled. As Lucy returned to the house, Ethan stayed where he was, Rex seated beside him, watching the door until it closed. The routine formed quietly after that. Ethan didn't insert himself. He attended meetings when asked. He answered questions when needed. He waited when waiting was required. Rex, however, became a constant. He walked Lucy to the fence some afternoons, sat with her on the grass while homework happened slowly. Let her rest against his side when words felt like too much. Children noticed. Teachers noticed. Something about a three-legged German shepherd with a tactical collar and a man who never hovered made space feel safer. Lucy laughed once during recess. It startled her. She froze, then laughed again. Soft, uncertain, but real. That night, she slept 4 hours without waking. Progress wasn't loud, but it was happening. And Ethan, standing a step back, understood something he hadn't allowed himself to consider yet. Staying didn't always mean stepping in. Sometimes it meant being visible enough that someone knew where to return, if they ever needed to. Change did not arrive with warning. It never did. The call came on a Thursday afternoon, quiet and procedural. Claire's voice on the other end of the line carried the same calm professionalism it always had. But Ethan heard the difference immediately. "There's a family approved for long-term placement," she said. "Out of county, good on paper, stable." Ethan leaned against the tailgate of his truck, eyes fixed on the line of hills beyond the river. Rex sat at his feet, head lifted, ears forward, sensing the shift before words finished forming. "When?" Ethan asked. "This weekend." A pause. "They're experienced," Claire added. "They've taken in children before." Ethan nodded once, though she couldn't see it. "I understand," he said. And he did. On paper, this was what success looked like. The house sat farther from town, larger, newer. The kind of place that had rules posted on the fridge and schedules written in neat handwriting, order, structure, predictability. Ethan parked across the street again, always a step back. Lucy stood at the curb beside Claire, holding the same small duffel bag. It had been packed carefully this time. Folded clothes, labeled items, everything accounted for. Two accounted for. The new family waited near the door. Smiles practiced, postures polite, distance measured, not unkind, but firm. Lucy didn't step forward right away. She turned instead. She saw Ethan. She saw Rex, her breath caught, not sharply, not visibly. Just enough that Ethan noticed. Always noticed. He stayed where he was. No wave, no signal. Rex rose to his feet slowly, standing tall beside Ethan, tactical collar catching the afternoon light. He didn't pull, didn't strain, he waited. Lucy walked toward them without being told. Claire allowed it. The foster couple watched, uncertain but restrained. Lucy stopped a few feet away. She didn't kneel this time. She didn't bury her face in Rex's fur. She stood very still, hands clenched loosely at her sides, eyes searching Ethan's face. "They have rules," she said. Ethan nodded. "They say rules make things easier. Sometimes they do." Lucy swallowed. "They don't like dogs inside," she added. Rex didn't move. Ethan felt something tighten, not anger, not fear, recognition. "And they don't like questions," Lucy continued quietly. Ethan held her gaze. "What kind of questions?" he asked. Lucy hesitated. The kind that slow things down. Silence settled between them, not empty, heavy. Lucy looked at Rex then, and finally reached out, resting her palm against his chest. Just once. Not clinging, not asking. Thanking. "He knows when to stay," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "He does." Lucy's eyes lifted back to Ethan's. For a moment, she looked like she might speak. She didn't. Instead, she did something else. She met his eyes fully, no flinching, no retreat, and held the look longer than a child usually would. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hope. It was a message. "I see the line. I know where you stand. Don't forget where I am." Ethan didn't nod, didn't promise, but his posture shifted just enough. "I won't disappear," he said quietly. Lucy exhaled. "That's enough," she said. Again. She turned and walked back toward the waiting family. The door opened. Voices resumed. Shoes crossed the threshold. The door closed. Rex sat. Ethan stayed. They watched the house, not because they expected something to happen, but because staying still had become its own form of vigilance. A car passed. Time moved. Finally, Ethan turned away. As they drove back toward town, Rex rested his head against the door, eyes half-lidded but alert. The river slid by, steady and indifferent, carrying reflection and shadow alike. Ethan thought of something a commanding officer had once told him, long ago. "You don't get to choose the mission," only whether you answer the call when it comes back around. He glanced at Rex. Not done yet, he murmured. Rex's tail thumped once. Miles away, Lucy sat in a new room with unfamiliar walls. She placed her duffel bag on the floor, untouched. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, listening. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She thought of a man who never stood too close, of a dog who never left his post, and she wondered, not with fear, but with clarity, if staying here would be another lesson, or if learning when to look back was the first sign she no longer had to face it alone. The road stretched on, the line held, and somewhere between distance and memory, a watch remained unbroken.